Hello and welcome to Faith Matters, the show where we look at Liverpool life through the prism of faith and belief. I'm about to go into the diocesan headquarters where I'm going to interview Stuart Haynes, who's the Director for Communications for the Diocese of Liverpool. Join me. Welcome to Faith Matters.
Thank you very much.
Stuart. You're the Diocesan Director of Communications for the Diocese of Liverpool.
Yeah.
What does this involve? What does your job involve?
It's a grand title, isn't it? It's really trying to get the message out about what the Church of England in this area is doing, what we stand for, trying to get people to engage with the church, get excited about the church, trying to basically sort of communicate all those kind of things. Our bishops come in and said we want to be a big church making a bigger difference. And what I'm trying to do and our team's trying to do is say, well, what does that mean for people? What does a bigger church mean? And how can we communicate the bigger difference that the church is making, so that people who don't actually necessarily connect with church go, oh, actually, I go to a food bank. That's the church making a bigger difference in my life. I know somebody who was christened. That's the church making a bigger difference in their lives. And it's all about sort of getting that message across to people and then getting people to think about religion and faith and connect it with the church, because as we know, loads of people are spiritual, loads of people will connect with things like the concept of prayer, but they don't do religion.
Right.
And how do we actually communicate that the church is actually a good thing, the religion side of it is a great thing, and we can actually sort of get that message through to people, and that's the challenge that we've got.
And it is a challenge.
Oh, it's a massive challenge.
And how's it going?
Well, we're kind of not quite there yet. But I mean, thinking about it, I suppose the thing with it is that, it's actually the people who don't care or haven't really thought about it that I'm bothered about. Yeah. There's the people who made their minds up, the atheists, the Dawkins, all of those kind of people. Yeah. We're not going to persuade them.
No.
They've got their position, we've got our position. We can lock horns, have an interesting debate, and that's fine. Yeah. But we're not going to change our hearts and minds. But I think it's about the people who are going through the day-to-day grind of life, actually saying to them, there's something about church, there's something about being with a group of people who are sort of trying to find what it means to live under this concept of a God. There's something about all of that stuff that actually can work for you, can help you. And how can we make that clear? And how can I, in this office, in the centre of the sort of the diocese communication stuff, helping the local churches sort of reach out to their community and say, we're doing stuff for you, we're there for you, we're helping you, and help people make those kind of connections. But it's a long way to go.
Well, Stuart, you're sounding a bit like a priest there, which is a good thing, because you are a priest.
I am a priest,
so
yes.
Not all diocesan communication officers are ordained, are they?
No. Well, I kind of fell into both roles at roughly the same time. I was training to be a priest when the job came up, and I said I'll do it temporarily just until I get ordained and do proper vicar stuff, whatever that is. Yeah. And that was about 8 years ago, and I'm still doing this whilst actually doing the priestly stuff in my spare time. I'm up in God's favoured country of Ormskirk, in the marvellous town of Ormskirk Parish Church, the only place to be as far as I'm concerned, but there may be a bit of bias there.
Everybody thinks that about their church.
Well, that's true, and they should do.
I think that about St. Son's Cross.
Of course. You should do. But I mean, so I sort of do Sunday stuff. It's a bit busy for me now because we haven't got our full-time vicar, so I'm sort of playing at being the vicar of Ormskirk, which has involved stuff that I wouldn't normally do, like remembrance services and civic services and all of those kind of things, which means I have to look a bit more like a vicar at times, which is a challenge for us all.
So how do you find these two roles working together? Do they work together? Is it conflicting in any way, or do you find that they complement one another?
I think they actually work brilliantly together, and I think the reason for that is that, no offence to our full-time colleagues, or yourself even, but priests think in a very strange way. And they have a very unique perspective on life, and the whole theological thinking and reflection can be brilliant, but can be quite confusing for people. Yeah. And if I can understand how a priest thinks, and if I can sort of see also a bit of what it's actually like for our vicars working on the coalface, as it were, then I can communicate with them better. I can give them better tools to communicate out. I can make their life easier. But also, if I can think like a priest and know all of that stuff, I can then sort of switch and start to translate it into sort of the common parlance. And there, no offence to some of my team, but a couple of my team are not sort of massively church going, and you can see at times they struggle with.
And they're quite young as well.
And they
younger than you anyway.
Well, most people are. Thank you for that. But they struggle with some of the church concepts, and sort of, I mean, church is just baffling and bonkers for a lot of people, mostly the people who work within the structures. So just trying to explain, and being able to explain what does an ordination mean to a journalist, trying to explain to people what does being a deacon. We lap around in the church. Oh, I was deacon the other day. The majority of people don't have a clue. And so I can sit in both camps and try and say, okay, well, actually what that means is, and start to translate it, hopefully not in a dumbing down way, but in a way that people can understand and grasp and go, oh, okay, a deacon is someone who is on their way to sort of the whole vicar thing. But
deacons,
but that starts to become that sort of, you understand that, I understand that, but how do we say, because anyone with a dog collar on is a vicar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, as soon as I put my collar on and go around Ormskirk, I am the vicar of Ormskirk as far as people are concerned.
Well, I had somebody in the chemist actually yesterday say to me, because I didn't have a dog collar on, and she said to his lovely shop assistant, she said, what do you do? And I said, I'm a vicar. And she said, you don't look much like a vicar. And her colleague said, well, what does a vicar look like?
Yeah.
And she said, not like that. Which I kind of took as a compliment.
But that's also one of the communication challenges for the church generally, is, what does a vicar look like? And if we can have more people like you and like others who are sort of looking like a vicar because you've got your dog collar on, but acting like not like a vicar. Not like a vicar, not like the sort of the Derek Nimmo perception or the all of those kind of, then people can start to go, actually, these aren't weirdos, these are normal people. These are people just struggling with the same things that everybody else is struggling with, but just from a perception of faith. I mean, Justin Welby was talking about the Paris stuff, and I think he was slightly misquoted, but he said it does make him sort of question God and doubt God. And I think loads of people think that as a priest, as a Christian, you've got it all sorted and everything's fine, and when something happens that's bad, you just breeze through it. No, we're all sort of struggling through. And how we communicate that across, and the beauty of my job is I can get to do it as a vicar, and I can get to do it as Director of Communications, and the communication practice can help understand how to be a better vicar.
So, Stuart, is it working as a church, or churches generally, not just the Church of England, not just the Diocese of Liverpool, but across the country, across the Western world? I mean, that's not too big a question. Are we communicating better?
I think we're learning and we are getting better. I think the fact of the matter is that the church is still relevant. The media will still come to come to me and ask for a clergy person to talk about things. They still see it as important, you know. And you look at things like the funeral of PC Phillips. The church was at the centre of it, and we were able to communicate very strongly through the media, through what we were doing as a body of people, that we're there for people, and so the city
yeah.
for our case, the city. And I think we're starting to learn that we don't get it right. We get bogged down in. I think what we do when we do it badly, what we do is we do our internal discussions in the public. So, the National Church will put out a statement on some of the big issues, and the first people that pile in and sort of criticise are actually the church rather than the outside world.
Yeah.
And we can act like a bickering family in public, and sometimes we need to do that discussion privately rather than externally.
And we're not the only organisation.
No,
that does
we're
that,
not.
no.
We're not. And I think part of it as well is because there's an element of being a political organisation in the same way that General Synod, our Parliament, matches the Houses of Parliament. So we've got all of that kind of political debate. But instead of having different sort of parties, Labour and Conservative, it's all internal parties of different wings and different ideas. And I think the other problem is that faith is so personal. That if I say to you your interpretation of the Bible and of Scripture or anything else is wrong, I'm not saying you've got a wrong understanding. I'm actually attacking you as a person, and people can really find that quite difficult.
Well, thanks, Stuart. We're going to cut away now to our commercial break. When we come back, we're going to talk about we're going to watch the Lord's Prayer film, and then we're going to talk about the Lord's Prayer and the controversy around that. Thanks.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name.
Thy kingdom come.
Thine will be done, on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day
our daily bread.
Forgive us our trespasses,
as we forgive those
who sin against us.
And lead us not into temptation.
deliver us from evil.
For thine is the kingdom,
and power and glory,
forever and ever.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Stuart, we've just seen the Church of England Lord's Prayer video. This, so-called controversial video. I didn't think there was anything offensive about it at all. I quite like it.
Yeah, there's nothing offensive about it. And
no.
it's
as
telling
it
of a
is.
prayer. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't perhaps speak for the National Church of England again, but why do you think the church has made this particular video at this time?
Well, the comms teams nationally, what they were looking at was to basically tap into the Star Wars film.
Right. Okay.
And so what they were saying is we've got an initiative called Just Pray. It's a website and an idea to try and sort of talk about prayer. And where's going to be the biggest audience that we're going to put this in front of? And they thought, well, loads of people are going to be cramming the cinemas to watch Star Wars when it's out. Why not buy advertising space in those cinemas and run this advert? And it was an attempt to hit that kind of audience. And I think it's, again, we were talking before the break about sort of how the church is learning communications. One of the things with it is saying, well, okay, how would products be marketed? You put it in front of big films and big events where there's lots of people going to be there and they'll start to talk about it. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do that.
And I'm interested in that Star Wars thing because we're thinking about Faith Matters of actually doing a programme on the spirituality of Star Wars and Doctor Who, and because there are you know, it is everything's spiritual, and there is a
Yeah.
now there's distinct spirituality, I think, in Star Wars. Do you think that was an accident, or do you think
No,
they thought about
I
it?
think that was the connection, because I think a lot of people within church circles do, you know, there are so many vicars that will reach for the Doctor Who sermon or the Star Wars sermon and use those sort of analogies, the Force as being an analogy for prayer.
Yeah.
And I think there was quite a deliberate connection going on there.
And it is said, actually, the makers of the film,
Yeah.
that there was some spiritual intent to, well, the original Star Wars. That
Yeah.
was the message they wanted to get through.
Exactly.
About good and evil.
Yeah.
And,
And a lot of these films, you know, that's why we can use them in church context for sort of preaching the message, as we would say it, because they have such a spiritual core. So there was something about that, and I think also that, you know, there was the religion that's Jedi in the census. There's all of these kind of things floating around that, whether it's totally consciously thought through, but at least some people were going, well, actually, people who go to watch Star Wars have got some level of spiritual engagement. Therefore, turning that as, you know, we would say in the Bible, Paul said, here's the unknown God, I will make him known. Here's this unknown force in Star Wars, I will make it known through the Lord's Prayer. And I think that was the original intent.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was a great idea, but the cinemas didn't like it, did they?
No.
What happened there, do you
Well, basically the story with that was the National Church had done the negotiations. They'd got discounts on the deal. They'd sort, you know, presumably argued like, well, we're a charity, we're trying this out.
And they
you know,
already paid for
they
it.
were. I don't know if they paid for it, but certainly the deal was on the table,
Yeah.
and it was all being signed, sealed, and delivered. The advert was cleared by the cinema advertising body, advertising standards agencies, all the people that legally need to say this is fine and clear and hits the standards and is okay. Then DCM, who are the company who oversee advertising for the main networks, so Odeon View and Cineworld, basically said it's not our policy. We can't run it because it's not our policy to show religious adverts because it might offend people, and hence the ban.
And
Effectively,
is that because they think, you know, all and sundry will then want their, so you wouldn't just get the mainstream religions, would you? You might get a few fringe groups, and, you know, atheists would be fine, but, you know, you might have. Is that what they think the problem might be?
They may want. I mean, what they stated, I think, was actually they linked it to political stuff, and was said in the Scottish referendum campaign they ran adverts for no and yes, and it alienated audiences and things. I think their true thinking hasn't necessarily come out, and there would be a lot of speculation around it.
Yeah.
I personally suspect that they would have been afraid of the precedent, that if we let the Church of England run this, then who else do we let run? But it's kind of odd in one sense, because, you know, the National Evangelical Movement Alpha courses have run adverts all over the place, on buses and everything else. We're running advertising campaign locally saying Christmas starts with Christ on billboards and buses and places like that. So it's not as if religion can't be advertised. It is just that I think the way it was done leads me to suspect, and I don't know, but leads me to suspect that somebody quite high up the chain got cold feet at the last minute and said, "Oh, this is we're heading into dangerous territory."
And people are not as offended as is sometimes thought. I
No.
mean, not just by this, but people are not offended by spiritual and religious advertising.
Well, you're not offended, but you might go in and watch any advert and go, "Oh, do you know what? I don't want to be force-fed."
Or I don't like the advert.
Yeah, I don't like the advert. I don't want to be force-fed that product.
Yeah.
I don't see why they should be advertising mobile phones in the cinema when they're telling us to turn them off. Whatever, you could get annoyed by anything, and then you let it go.
Yeah.
You know, so if you don't like it, it's 1 minute of your life to watch an advert. You know, and then you get on. I mean, ironically, what would probably happen is in cinemas, as you know, a lot of people would half engage with it, and some might not have noticed.
By popcorn, aren't they?
By doing this ban, DCM have basically handed us on a plate a talking point about free speech, about religion and advertising. They've enabled the video to be watched on the official Church of England channel at least 750,000 times, plus, you know, as with social, it just gets shared and replicated in other places. national conversations and us having this conversation. We wouldn't have this conversation now.
No.
You wouldn't have thought of running this story. It would have been a very tiny story.
Yeah.
Had it just gone in the cinemas. But, oh, that's interesting, the Church of England advertising in cinemas. Now it's a big controversy, and we're able to talk about the advert and then also what's behind it, which is the encouragement to get people to think about prayer.
So it's worked really, not in the way we intended.
Not totally not in the way we intended, and I don't think the Church of England was being Machiavellian in trying to get it banned. We genuinely
we're not that clever.
We're not that sophisticated. God love us.
Yeah.
But it's totally worked in our favour because suddenly then everybody is talking about. But see, one of the other reasons behind it, I think, is that prayer is the least offensive part of the Christian thing. That when anything happens, people, whether they're religious or not, will often talk about prayer. And so prayer is a great entry point. You know, we prayed for Paris, we prayed for Mwamba, we prayed for this disaster. You probably get so many people like I do who don't come to church, don't know anything apart from the fact that you're a Christian, say, oh, my aunt is ill, can you pray for them?
And I think everybody prays.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
It might be at a point of desperation.
Yeah.
So what's the campaign, the Just Pray campaign? This is a campaign that Church of England is already running. Just to try and get people to think about the prayers they are saying maybe already.
It's to get people, to encourage people to pray. There's a website, justprayit.co.uk. It's had 2.7 million prayers on it. And it's encouraging people just to sort of put those situations before God. It's the very basic thing that we do as Christians, is we kind of say, it's all a bit whatever, I'll pray to God.
And what is prayer? Is it conversation with God? How do you
it's a load of things to different people. For me, it is a conversation. For me, it's either sort of a nice little chat or a sort of desperate cry of help, or sometimes a sort of, I will often, I'm don't do conventional prayer very well myself, but what I do is a lot of things like sort of sitting in the car screaming at God, saying, why is this happening? What's going on? What's happening? Or a prayer for help.
Because we're in a relationship with God, aren't we? And this is how we relate to people in our normal, even not our normal relationship, our daily relationship. Sometimes we'll have a conversation, quiet conversation. I'm just thinking about talking to my wife. Sometimes there'll be a bit of shouting involved, and this is the stuff of relationships, and this is the message we're proclaiming: is Jesus enables us to have a relationship with God.
It is that conversation, and I think I just thought of it, but the cleverness about the website, Just Pray It, is like the Nike thing, just do it. And it's if you can do nothing else, just pray, just talk, just converse, get it out there.
On that note, Stuart, it's been great. Thank you for coming in today and communicating with us and with the great public of Merseyside, and look forward to having you on again sometime.
Thank you very much.
Take care.